Yes, it is I, Dragonar Van Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue my discussion on anime series, where I review them for you, and then let you know how you can use them in your Big Eye, Small Mouth games, your BESM games, or perhaps even adapting them to other role-playing game systems. So, we have two more from back in 2014 as we continue back in time there, and then I have two more classic series I want to talk about with you. So let's start with the ones from 2014, Blade and Soul, and Seikoku no Dragonar. Let's start with that one, Seikoku no Dragonar, or Dragonar Academy. So in the continent of Strata, there is a group of folks that are known to, of course, breed dragons, to raise them up. And those that breed dragons are granted a special mark, and they attempt to, of course, breed the greatest dragon into a rank known as a maestro, which once they do this, they prove themselves worthy of becoming a noble. Basically, they earn a noble place within the various society there. We focus on one of the academies which raises dragons. And of course, we focus on a student there, Ash Blake. Ash is known for being, well, a problem child. Why? He doesn't have a dragon partner. All those that receive the mark get a partner. He has the mark, but no partner. No dragon which he's breeding. He ends up in a disagreement with a princess, and the princess challenges him to a race. Now, he has no dragon of his own, but in the course of entering into this race, something strange occurs. A young girl appears to him in place of where his dragon should be. A young girl who claims to be his master, and he is the servant. Echo. And that's where our strange adventure with a supposed dragon who appears as a human, and who really is Ash Blake and what's going on with him, begins. So if we talk about the genres here, it's a fantasy. It's a world of dragons and magic and such. It's also a romantic comedy. We see that he has these sort of romantic relationships with Echo and the princess to a degree that makes them have very funny things going on. Also, because it's the three of them in a sort of relationships together, it is a very light harem element. Definitely there is that vein in there that exists, especially in the anime version of it. Now, if I was to rate this one, I would call it a 4. It's actually pretty decent. The romantic comedy elements are funny for the funny parts of it. The harem element's not overpowering, and it's an interesting fantasy setting, so I definitely could recommend checking it out. Now, if you are using it in a BESM game, I'm going to recommend 400 points. You're going to make your players, of course, breeders of dragons. You will have the marks, you'll have your dragon partners, you'll be going to the academy. Now at the academy, you'll be doing with your normal kind of education, you'll be dealing with raising your dragons, competitions that might occur, fights and competition between each other, competitions with other academies, perhaps dealing with some of the circumstances of the society that they're in and the connotations that are there. Each of them will have their own reasons for being there. And you might deal with some of the overarching plot elements that are similar to those that you found appearing in the main series. You can bring those in if you want to, some of the threats and dangers that need to be faced and overcome. And your players could possibly meet these, overcome them, deal with them in your own way. And any other kind of positioning within this society or school that you make your characters is completely up to you about how you want to adapt it exactly. But generally speaking, in the school, going through all the various things that someone at this school would encounter. So let's move on and, of course, talk about Blade and Soul. Aika is an assassin of the Clan of the Sword. Now, she is left on a journey in order to hunt down this woman, Jin Vado. Jin Vado was the murderer of her master. And along the way, of course, she meets interesting women, other people that teach her many things and try to change her life. The fact is, her master, his dying wish was for her to leave the company of assassins and basically give up that life, become a normal person to a degree. And the journey that she goes on, that this journey of initially of revenge, begins to have her face some of her own humanity that she had thought lost, and bring some of that ability to leave the life of assassin perhaps behind along the way. Of course, there are some connotations with what's going on with this Jin character that she cannot overcome, that she's sort of still driven into conflict there. As much as she wants to escape it, as much as she's attempting to escape it, some things are still pulling her back into this violent life. It is a balancing act between the two of these as she struggles with this, struggles with the confrontation of it in front of her, while things around her are pushing her to leave it. Now, as for genres, it's an action. Get into battles, fights, beating other various people in battles royales. Adventure. Aika travels the land. She goes to various places, meets new people, encounters them. It's also martial arts. It does have a definitely deep martial arts feel in the way that she has mastered her techniques from her master, and a lot of them use other techniques which hit very martial arts beats. Now I rate this one a 3. It's pretty good. It's an interesting one. It's from an extended media empire, of course. There's games and such based upon it. But the series itself isn't a bad example of a martial arts series. There are some flaws in it that I could definitely see, but if you like that kind of show, I would recommend checking it out. So if you are using this as a BESM game, I recommend 350 points. Effectively, you're making a group of former assassins. They would have been all from various assassination groups, but we're coming along with that same storyline, that either master or teacher of all of them, someone that was related to all of them, gets murdered and drives them away from their original organization into leaving it through the wishes of them. But of course there's this path of revenge that's laid out in front of them, of dark forces that are in the world itself, and there's this figure heading it that is the enemy that they seek, the one that they would seek revenge against, that's driving them forward. So they have this want of gaining revenge, but also to live up to the wishes. And each of the characters should fight with this. They had their own reasons for initially becoming assassins, and own reasons for listening to what the master, or the person that was murdered, was saying to them. And so each of them together must, on their own, confront these demons, but also work together to confront them, while still dealing with the literal kind of demonic forces or dark forces that are banging down at them that they must help to overcome from the world around them. Getting that juxtaposition between the conflict of the inner and the outer is what's going to make the series, the game, interesting. So let's talk about some classic series. First off, we have Cowboy Bebop. So Cowboy Bebop is definitely a classic. We're set in about 2071, about 50 years after a horrible accident basically rendered most of Earth inhospitable. Much of humanity has moved to, well, the solar system. They've spread out into various colonies here and there where they're making do. And they're not making do in the best of ways. They're eking out a living in a lot of these places. So there's this connotation of criminal activity that's risen up. But society itself isn't, in general, holding it down. So the law itself creates a system of bounty hunters, who in this world are called cowboys, to go out and hunt down the criminals, to deal with some of the problems that society itself couldn't deal with. It's good money to be a bounty hunter just as much as it's good money to be a criminal. So the enterprises sort of help fight against the crime and help keep things in check. We focus on one crew, a crew of the spaceship Bebop. Bebop travels around the solar system going to various places where its crew takes care of criminals, captures them, and goes on various adventures. We have Spike, who has some criminal activities in his past, Jet, who was once a police officer, Faye, a con artist, Edward, a young girl who's also a hacking genius, and Eins, a genetically engineered super intelligent dog. And the 5 of them deal with various bounties and try to gain money, try to survive in this world, all while hitting in hints of their own dark pasts and problems that are in their pasts, and once confronted them, having to try to overcome them in order to make themselves better as they are. Each of them has something in them that's just a little broken from dark portions of their past, and it's up to them to, in the course of the series, overcome these to a degree, to face against these problems that they're hitting. So the genres for this are, of course, sci-fi. We're set in the solar system, space travel, spaceships. It's also definitely a Western. The bounty hunters are called cowboys. There's definitely a great Western feel to it, even if it's in a sci-fi setting. It also has neo-noir. It's basically that noir setting, except it's set in a more modern/futuristic setting. It's the old detective stories of past brought to light here in a way, too, because there's that detective side of it, and some of the ways that they shoot and do things feels very much like those old classic detective shows would. Now, this one is definitely rated a 5. This is one I would recommend if you know someone who doesn't like anime on the sheer principle of it. This is one they might like. This is just one that someone who doesn't like anime might like. That's why it's highly recommended you check this one out. And this is a good one to try playing as, too. So if you are using this in a BESM game, I'd recommend 250 points. You're going to make your character's crew a bounty hunting crew. They'll have their own spaceship, they'll each have their own abilities, and the crew will go out and travel to various places throughout the solar system to take out criminals, to collect bounties, to survive their normal lives. Each of them will have their own reasons for entering into the bounty hunting professions, perhaps even their own dark past that they will confront over the course of the adventures you throw them on. Various bounties might draw them into situations where they'll have to confront something from their own history, which will help them evolve as characters and bond together more as a team. Because that's going to be the thing, is that they're going to start bonding more and more as a team. The reasons that they started out together could be something as simple as convenience, and growing up to be more of a family is something that was a goal in developing this group together. Of course, they might still have to deal with criminal organizations and the authorities themselves, whether corrupt or not corrupt. All three of these things are things that they will also deal with in the course of these and trying to collect their bounties. And each of them should be their own sort of little puzzle or mystery that they're going to be solving. Figuring out how to get him, how to capture him, how to find him. All these things together make for interesting gameplay. Let's talk about Boogiepop Phantom. Now, we are past Halloween when I'm putting this video out, but because I missed the week of Halloween, I wanted to share one with you. Boogiepop Phantom. This is a classic one that has a interesting dark feel to it. We're set in a world where 5 years ago there was a series of grisly murders, and then, a couple of months ago, there was a strange pillar of light. We basically see events in vignette form after we go character after character, the majority of them being high school students, and seeing what's going on in this world from their point of view. So we might have the same scene from two different directions. It is said that the murders are restarting, and there's this strange figure. This figure that is said to be a young girl dressed in these robes called Boogiepop. She is said to be the personification of death and haunts those that would be soon dying. And as we move into the series, we see that there are darker things in play than just a spectral phantom of death and murders going on. Grisly things are afoot, and our players will be meeting them head on. So this is, of course, horror. There's great deals of horror elements of death and pain going on there. It's not so much of a blood and gore, even though you can get some of that. It's a lot more of a psychological horror, I would say, to a good degree. It's also definitely mystery. There's mysteries abound about what's going on here, the truth of what the matter is. The mysterious girl who appears. Who is she really? What is she? What's going on here? What's the source of many of these things? It's also supernatural. We see very supernatural connotations with the mysterious, almost ghostly figure of Boogiepop appearing where she does. There's another one I would rate a 5. This is definitely one of the better classic horror animes. It has such interesting horror connotations without a lot of that necessity of a lot of these slasher flick kind of things. Again, it's got a good deal of psychological horror also in here to make it very good. So if you're doing this in a BESM game, I'd recommend 140 points. You're going to make your characters a group of high school students who all saw the Pillar of Light. Now, they're dealing with that there are strange disappearances going on in their neighborhood, so their basic lives are being interrupted. They probably know each other. We now have to deal with those disappearances, and that there's some kind of strange organization in play, something perhaps supernatural, dark connotations going on in the city around them, that some of them are real, and some of them are not. And there's always this phantom, Boogiepop, around them, giving them this hint of what's really going on. Now, the exact level that you're going to delve into the universe as the anime is completely up to you, and what story beats you want to take are completely up to you. You could come up with some of your own story beats using this similar setting. You don't have to mimic things exactly as the anime, but whatever you take in, remember, it's got that kind of dark, twisted horror feel, that there's this spookiness to it. There's this dread overwhelming your characters as dark things are going on around them. And they might not be able to do anything to stop it. Dread is the word that we want to use here. It's going to be a driving force. Dread and mystery. So remember those two, and you'll do a good job of running this one here. But that's it for today. So, I introduced you to 4 more anime series, of course giving you some information about each of these series, and then I told you some ways, gave you some suggestions as to use them in your BESM games, your Big Eyes Small Mouth games. Now, truthfully speaking, you could use these in any role-playing game. You're going to have to adapt them properly to the system. Character creation, any kind of special abilities that characters might have, even some special rules might be needed to adapt these, of course, to the system properly. But with a little effort and a little work, you could take any of these suggested worlds and ideals and put them in a role-playing game system you love. Adapt it in a way that you like it. I've only given you some basic suggestions that help you with, of course, BESM. But I hope you're having a great day. If you have any interesting stories about an anime series that you really love, or maybe some BESM games you've played, please leave them in the comments below. And until the next time, I bid you farewell.